rebuilding confidence, and harmonizing with nature. With over 4 decades of changing lives, your self-discovery archaeologist, get ready to be the best of you with your host, Beverly Zimet.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Beverly Zimet Show, where being that best you has just gotten easier. My guest today calling in from Birmingham, UK, and her name is Kathy Sanderson. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Beverly, for having me. It's great to be here.
Awesome. So, what is it Kathy does over there in Birmingham?
Oh, I do lots of things. I wear lots of hats. I'm mum to 3 children. I run my husband's building businesses. We're just coming to the end of a house renovation. But my passion, my pure passion, is showing people how their childhood experiences are the reason that they feel about themselves today, why they feel that they don't matter, that they feel that they're not enough, why they have no confidence, and showing them that it doesn't have to be that way and showing them how.
Wow. That sounds like a great mission to be on because, it is so true. We get busy in our lives, right? In our busy world. And this year it's been quite different, right? Everything has kind of been slowed down. Some things have come to a complete halt. So it's given us an opportunity, if we choose it, to begin to look inward as to what's happening and what's going on, right? So you say you're the mother of 3. How old are those little ones?
They are 10, 7, and 6.
Oh, beautiful ages, right? So when you look at your children at those ages, and then you look at yourself and you look at others, and what you just were saying, how it is that your past, how you grew up, your processing as a child, all of that taking into aspect of what it does and how it impacts your life today. How are you noticing with your children? And let's say creating an alteration so that they can continue into life without getting caught up and hung up in some of the disaster and the mess and the chaos as we are as adults and as we go through life. Could you share that with the audience?
Yeah, it is it's sometimes quite nice to go through life being totally unconscious of what we're doing and that our actions have consequences and that we do have control and that life doesn't happen to us. We are in charge of it. Because when you start to have these realizations, you realize that you're responsible. You can't blame anybody else. And
Right.
that also goes to your children. So a lot of my troubles stem from my mum not believing in herself, not feeling that she was enough, because it doesn't matter what people say, it's what you pick up. It's the 90% nonverbal communication. And, that affected so much. It affected her relationships with other people, with my dad. And then, of course, my dad had his issues from being how he was brought up. And that's what you'd been told for so long. That was how you brought children up. So now I've suddenly got this whole new way of thinking. And no, I'm not bringing my children up the way that I was brought up. That's a big responsibility.
Yes,
and just
it is.
silly things, like, no, you're not wearing that. Well, now I let my daughter, if she wants to wear her welly boots with her best dress, that's fine. Wear what you want. And like about children needing to eat the food because of the starving children in Africa. Your mum spent ages making that food.
Oh my goodness. That takes me back. That is so true. Oh my goodness.
And it's only recently that I cannot eat my children's food if they leave it on their plate, and I can throw it in the bin. I can make that effort and I can throw it in the bin. I used to hear about mums who would put washing up liquid over the food so that they didn't eat it. But to me, that was wasteful. I couldn't do it. And it's only the past few years that I've stopped doing it. If my children don't want to eat the food, although I feel it pulling at every sinew in my body, I let them leave it. Because, yeah, I may have spent ages cooking it, and, I might know that they're going to be hungry in half an hour's time. However, I don't want my children growing up thinking that they have to eat everything on their plate, feeling that dinner times are a stressful situation. And, if you're stressed and you've got anxiety because of how it felt around the dinner table, that causes you to have stomach problems and food issues. I don't want my children.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And that is so true. Thank you for sharing that, because again, it's your thought processing, it's your experiencing, it's what's triggering, because then it's like, oh, what's next? What's mom going to say, or what's dad going to do? Am I going to be yelled at? Am I going to get stuck in my room? All these different anxieties. And these kids in Africa that are starving, what does that got to do with anything that's on your plate? I mean, so psychologically, we really put things in place that does harbor unconsciously. And when you look at different cultures around the world, right, and how that has come into being, and how we are on automatic pilot with a lot of that thinking processing, and how it has impacted our lives. I've been on the planet for a really long time, and observing and watching not only my children, but my grandchildren, my great grandchildren, nieces
Wow.
and nephews, grandnieces and nephews. We got a big family. I'm second oldest of 11, so there's a bunch of us running around, okay? But to be able to sit back and watch and observe all of these different things, all of these different cultures, all of the interaction, all the extended families, coming together as a unit, and where we came out of, and how that shifting has taken place, and how we've all individually said, you know what? The same thing you said. I'm not going to have my children grow up this way. So we have that pendulum that swings, right? And sometimes it swings way over here because it was way over here. And then all of a sudden it begins to come back down into some balance, which is what it's all about. And it's options. So I watched, how I shifted with my children, and then watch how they kind of shifted, with my grandchildren, and where I am today with these great grandbabies, right? And they're from age 3 to age 13, which is a nice broad spectrum, right? But at the same time, it's how you respond to them differently, how you respond to your grandnieces and nephews differently, because again, you look at those wisdom years, and you look at cultures, the Aborigine cultures. And what did they do? And look at where we are today. And over the last maybe probably 10, maybe even going on 15 years, how many grandparents have stepped up to the plate to take care of the grandchildren because of that segment in between, that where the pendulum had swung so far the other way, especially with drugs, especially with identity crisis, right? The anxieties, the tensions, the extremes that we've had. There's got to be some form of harmony, right? So where does that go from here? And where,
And that's what I struggled with it, because I grew up thinking, well, hitting was normal.
right?
That was what you got, And I would much rather have been hit than sent to my room, because I didn't ever want to be out of the picture. I always, hit me, whatever, it doesn't matter. But how can we teach children who get hit that it's not acceptable as they get older? So
Right.
then they go and they find a partner, and well, yeah, but he hits me because he doesn't like what I'm doing, and that's where's the cutoff point? Because my parents hit me because they didn't like what I was doing, that type of thing. So I made that conscious decision that I was not going to hit my children. There was not going to be that discipline, but I shout. I do it another way, and I shout, and so that's wrong. So stop doing that. Then it's the disciplining. Well, the only way I knew how to discipline from my parents was guilt and shame.
Right? Oh my
So
gosh, that is so true. And that's devastating. Sometimes the physical pain heals so much faster than the emotional or the mental
yeah,
pain, right? So when you said, the shame and the guilt, it's like, wow, that really strikes a chord. But it's that recognizing. So, Kathy, kudos that you're recognizing these things and being able to say, wait a minute, I'm going to make a conscious choice here to do something different. And what is that? How do you communicate? Open lines of communication. I'll tell you, my
that's what
kids,
you have to do,
you
isn't it? You
do.
have to be open.
Yeah, it does. My kids sometimes they're like, "Oh, geez, mom, can't you just like send me to my room? Can't you just like ground me or something?" No, not the conversation.
And they look down at their feet and they don't want to touch you because they don't want to admit
It's like
what they've
not
done.
again. Well, when you give them the opportunity to make the choices, to give them the opportunity to say, "Okay, what ran amok here? What could we do differently? What can we do, you know, to make a change or a shift? What can we do to make it better? Not make it wrong. So what can we make it better?" And that's kind of one of the reasons why I put this show together, being that best you that you can be. Because there's nothing wrong with you as you are right now, but there's always room for betterness and greatness, right? So when I listen to what you're saying here, Kathy, I'm seeing that you're saying, okay, I can find a better way because I'm recognizing that this maybe not be the best way because you recognize that reaction to an action, right? So when you notice the difference from, say, your oldest child to your youngest child, there's what, 4 years, 5 years difference in between?
Yeah, 4 years. Yeah,
Yeah.
4, 5.
So what we learn with the first child is completely different with what we learn with the youngest child. There was 20 years, well, actually 20, almost 22 years, because my older sister's almost 2 years older than me, between the oldest and the youngest in my siblings, right? That's a long time, a really long time. So to be able to observe how my mom and dad raised, say, like the first half with the second half, right? And my youngest sister being just 1 year older than my oldest son. So she became more of a daughter to me because she was always over at my place because we didn't live that far away, right? And my kids were stair steps, and she just happened to be at the top of the stairs. So many of my relatives actually thought I had 4 kids because she was always with me instead of mom because there was 6 years between her and the twins, right? So when you look at that perspective and you observe those things, it's like, okay, where does the buck stop? And I really like what you're saying here because you're saying I don't I don't want to discipline my children by hitting them. Now, does a good crack across the bottom end sometimes get their attention? You know? And sometimes maybe we need that little attention getter, right? It's like, oh, okay, what did I do? Right? It's like an attitude adjustment type of thing, right? Just to kind of get an attention. And that's one thing I have to say, we did get our bottom end, cracked a few times, but we were never beat. But we did get our attention, right? And again, it's like, where do you go from here? But my mom was a yeller. Oh my goodness. And I fell into that, right? And so like you're saying, all of a sudden you find yourself putting out the guilt, the shame, to get them to respond. It's a threatening fear, right? How do you compare what you went through as a child and what your reaction was, and you caught yourself and you began to recognize that you were feeding into that same disciplinary action, to what is actually going on in the world today with that guilt and shame that's being put on us through this COVID reactionary responses? Do you see any kind of patterning there whatsoever? And could you share that with the audience?
Well, guilt and shame is how the world is controlled. So back to your question about parenting, I went totally the other way. So the pendulum swung totally the other way. And my parents didn't shout. I don't remember them shouting. I shout because I never felt heard. So I know why I shout and have to not shout. But guilt and shame are they're brilliant at controlling people. They cause people to shut up because they're embarrassed that they might be doing something wrong, that people will laugh at them, the whole shame thing. We feel guilty about people becoming ill because of our breath, so we wear masks and those types of things. We feel guilty that we are endangering other people, so we put our own freedom behind that. And the guilt and the shame then, of course, lead into fear, and that is how the whole of this whole year, near enough, has gone ahead. Is the fear I might catch something, the fear that has been put into the media and all of those types of things. And guilt and shame are what keeps people in control and not saying, well, actually, no, I don't agree with that. It keeps everybody in their own little pigeonhole. And then when people do step out of their pigeonhole, they're guilted and they're shamed because they're having a meeting of like-minded people to express their own opinions. So through all my work, guilt and shame are very powerful, and we learn it from childhood. I had a really big discussion with my son's school because the way that they discipline and control is through shame. It's that traffic light system.
Right.
You know, if you start on green and you go down to orange and then you go down to red. But why do we think that that's acceptable? Because we wouldn't accept it as adults at work. If we'd had a bad night because, say, the baby wouldn't go to sleep, or my mum was up ill with dementia or something, and I came into work and I wasn't feeling great, and then my boss, in front of everybody in the whole office, turned around and says, well, I don't think you're doing very good behaviour today. I think I'm going to move you down to orange. And that's in front of the whole of the office. Everyone who sees your name there now thinks that you didn't do well.
Right.
But we think that's acceptable to children. So from that very, very, very early age, the children are learning to be controlled by guilt and shame.
Right. And then they respond to that and they react, right? And they act out. And then what do? We pile more discipline upon their actions. So everything, and every action has a reaction, right? And all our reactions are interpreted by what? The database of information that we attain as we go through life, right? As a child, you're limited in what you know in that database because of where you are in the circumstances in the environment, and we become a product of that environment. So what you're teaching your children here is to have a mind of their own, to make choices. Okay, like you said, oh, you want to wear those boots with that outfit, have at it, right? And I kind of did the same thing with my kids too, because oh man, I was a rebel. Whew, I was a real rebel. And it was like, I'm from the age of 2, you're not going to tell me what I have to do and how I need to perform to get my picture taken. I grew up as a tomboy. Oh my gosh. Back in the 60s and in the 50s okay? Way different than what's going on in today's world. I grew up on a farm, right? And it's like, Mom, what I can remember her saying, Beverly, go put a shirt on before we get because she was taking pictures outside, whether we were having one of the kids' birthday or she just wanted to take a picture for whatever reason, right? It's like, well, the boys don't have to put a shirt on. I don't have to. And I didn't, right? And, my body didn't start changing until I was like 16. So I have a lot of pictures at different ages. But again, that was like, okay, whatever. But you look at what's going on in life today and how that would be a shame, as you say, right? Well, you need to do that because you're a girl. My body looks no different than that. Why do I have to do this and they don't have to do that? That was always my question. And usually
But that's
back
a good
then,
question, isn't it?
it
It's shamed
is.
out you. Why don't
Right.
you want to be a normal girl? Why can't you just be like so and Mary Jo? Why do you always have to press? Now, my daughter, she's just 10, but she's just starting to develop. So now she has to wear a little bra top around the house. And like she's like, why do I have to? And I'm like, because you waited and waited and were desperate to have growing boobies, and now you must wear a little bra top. But her sister, who is 7, is just running around the house naked. Now we have my my husband's brother living with us, and I say to them, you must not embarrass your uncle by running around naked, because how people will perceive it. So you must put clothes on. But my middle daughter, she just would happily have no clothes on.
Right.
Wherever we went. And, she did used to go out with my mum and dad before my dad passed. And they'd often phone me and they'd say, oh, she hasn't got any knickers on. She's cavorting around a pole on a train and she has no knickers on, But she just didn't want to wear clothes. And it didn't matter how much I checked before she went out, those knickers would come off.
Right.
And how you react to that is whether she learns to grow up in shame or whether we just think it's her.
Right. And that is so true. And it's unfortunate that we have to suppress that freedom. I'm the same way. Okay. If I could just run around naked here, it wouldn't bother me at all, right? But then there's other people in the house who would have an issue with it. Yeah, granted, it's their problem. But again, when we look at how life has shifted with the whole sexuality of everything, right? Again, go back into ancient civilizations, in the indigenous people and stuff. They did not look at the human body as a meat machine, as a sex object, as a whatever. There was reproduction, but there was a beauty about that, right? And we've been so inundated with the whole idea that the human body has to be this thing that needs to be covered up, that needs to be, shamed, that needs to be looked upon as being something that it's not. How do we shift that in a society, right?
It's interesting you say that. I watched this program, and it was a reality TV star, the lady, and her family went back to live with a tribe in Africa. But what they did was they transplanted the house. So they recreated their house in the tribe. So everyone else was living in huts, and they had their house with their washing machine, their TV, all of this stuff, shower, iron. And the indigenous people, the tribes, they just didn't understand why they had them.
Right.
But the most telling thing was, of course, now the ladies were going around, their boobs were out, their breasts were out. They, I think they covered up below, but only like very, very limitedly. Now this girl was quite big, this reality TV star, but there were big girls in the tribe as well. So they were trying, because she dressed them up like her, so they were trying to dress her up like them, and she just couldn't do it. But what the tribe couldn't get was that she was ashamed of her body.
Right. Exactly.
Because they didn't know. Why
No.
would you be ashamed?
Right. it is a known fact of life, right? And that is a very, very good point. Again, it's what you know. It's the database of information and the training that you've had. So why would you take something as precious as this human body and hide it and cover it up? But at the same time, now you go to the other extreme, and you have, partial covering, you have sensuous things, you have, sneak previews, shall we say, right? You know, all of these enticements and everything. So, what is this pendulum swinging here? What is this all about, right? And again, we look at the dance. Let's watch animals. And how does an animal have that mating dance, right? What is the human mating dance of sensuality and sexuality? And when things are hidden from us, things are taken away, what does that do? It opens up the curiosity of wanting something that's just out of reach, right? And, so if everything is there in the open and available, and it's shared upon and looked upon as a fact of life and the beauty of what nature is, right? Then what's the big deal? Because we always want something that we can't just quite get our hands on, right? What's behind those closed doors? How many game shows are out there? And I know you guys got those game shows over there too. What's behind door number 1? Door number 2? Door number 3? What's your choice? I can give you this, and this is what you know. Here's your gift for today. Or do you want a chance behind that door or that door or that door, just in case there's something better? But then there could be something not so good, right? And so this is our curiosity, right? This is that, what's back there? Now, you can, in a game show, it's not about fear. The boogeyman's back there, right? And this is another thing. We grow up as a child, right? You don't want them to do something. Yeah, I don't want you over there. I don't want you going in that closet. I don't want you going over here, and what do? Something's in there that's going to get you. Well, where's your curiosity? Do you go for it? Or do you just assume all these bad things? This boogeyman is under the bed, in the closet, right? It's going to come and get me. And, it's crazy when you really start to talk about things and pull these things apart. But it became second nature. It's just what you did, it's just what transpired. But it started out something little. And with each generation, it got bigger and bigger and bigger.
That tribe, going back to that tribe, they didn't want anything. They were happy how they were. There was no greed. There was no, well, you didn't see it. There probably was war, I don't know. But, there was no greed. And going back to that game show thing, it's a thing of missing out, of getting something that somebody
else is going to get something that, better than you type of thing. It was competition,
Yeah.
And I think competition is good. But again, things in moderation. And what is that competition?
But it's more greed. It's greed
It
because
is.
you don't feel content with your life. What this tribe had was they were content. They knew their roles. They knew what they had to do every day. They knew they had to go to the water place and avoid the snake and stuff. But there was no, they were content. There was no greed. There was no, and that's what today is, isn't it? It's because we're not happy, so we're always trying to grab stuff, whether we do it, whether we go into debt, whether we go and take it because we believe we deserve it, but we're not happy. Because if we were happy, if we were content, we wouldn't need to change ourselves to aspire to something else.
Well, when you look at where, where someone is versus where you are. And when you find that inner self and that inner peace, right? Regardless of what your environment or surroundings is, that that exterior contentment, as you put it, that peace and that all-knowingness is an observant out here. What happens to it in here, because you're observing something different out here than in here. So it's always reaching for something out here and trying to find something over there and bringing it in, whatever it is, to fulfill the lack in here. So we'll go back into the indigenous tribe here, right? They didn't have that because they were content with what was going on in here. They had an inner peace and an inner knowing that they were okay with whatever was going on in their surroundings. So now they're looking at this foreign object in the middle of their lifestyle, questioning, what is that? At the same time, you have someone who put themselves in this other environment and they're looking out saying, what is that? Right? So
They're going on like they have everything, but they don't. They have nothing.
right.
The tribe has everything because they have companionship, they have contentment, they have happiness, and all of those things. And this house is just full that no one has that.
Right. But they think, again, it's our thought processings, right? Oh, yes, we have the convenience of running water. We don't have to take this bucket down to the river, right? We don't have to filter, we don't have to whatever and come back, right? We don't have to wander through the woods and shoot dinner for tonight. We don't have to go out and pick the berries. We don't, because we just what? We have it shipped in. We go to the store, and again, you look at, just asking children today, oh, where does your food come from? Well, it comes from the store. Okay, where does the store get it? I don't know. They get it from a truck because they see it getting unloaded, right? So as you move back, move back, where does it come from? Right? So
my family are vegan. My children, we're vegan. Because my daughter, my 7-year-old daughter, she was severely intolerant to dairy and eggs, so we took it out of her diet. I was already vegetarian, and we just progressed. But they're probably the only children in their school at that time who knew where their food came from.
Right.
When people would be talking, they learn and they become very passionate about it. So they'd be telling people that was from a chicken, or that was from a pig, or that was from a cow, and people would be like, look, you child, stop telling them because, or it was from a sheep. Can they stop telling them where it's from because we want them to carry on eating it? That is just cognitive dissonance. Disconnect, dissonance. How can you say that you don't want your child to know where the food's coming from?
And that's so true. That is really true. It's like if it sounds or feels or looks gross, because that's usually the response, right? Then why are you partaking of it? I can relate to you. I'm totally vegan. I've been that way for a long time. But I grew up on a farm. But we did our own. We grew our own vegetables as well as our own beef and chicken and cows and and pigs and whatever. But it was, again, from there to where we are today is completely different, right? When you look at the mass farming that goes on, and I can remember really going, completely away from anything carnivorous was in the 90s, okay? But after I had left the farm in the late 60s, I didn't really eat a whole lot of meat products because they did not taste the same as when you raised your own, because they were kind of farm fed, And when you look at today's world, right, how chickens are raised and what they're fed. When you look at how pork is raised and fed, when you look at how beef is raised and fed, oh my goodness, it is not the natural things, right? So you're putting unnatural things into a body that's used to natural things. And you go to the other extreme as well when you look at plant derived foods, right? Oh my gosh, they're not really growing in the manner in which their natural environment. The GMOs, right?
Yeah,
The the human is finally saying, wait a minute, what is this genetically modified things? What's happening when they're seeing the deformities, when they're seeing the destruction, when they're watching the human element. And again, we have segments of ages, right? Okay, I'm up here in that baby boomer edge, right? I'm way up here. Right? How I was raised in the food that I ate back there in the 50s is not the same food that is on the grocery store that's on your table here today. And this big organic thing. Well, that was just the natural thing when I grew up. We didn't have the word organic. That's just what it was.
that's it. And
Right?
people have come in and they've just destroyed it all. It's just, when you look at the quality of the food now, unless you buy organic, and organic costs double the price, but we do it because we're worth more than that. We're worth
Right.
having that food. And we don't do a lot of other stuff, so we can, we don't focus on stuff. But that's what we need to do, isn't it? We need to work out that we're worth it, that we don't have to have the cheap of the
Right.
cheap of the cheap.
Right. And again, it's where the masses go. Right? If everyone is buying this because of cost, so we're looking at that almighty dollar, right? And so therefore, well, it looks the same, it must taste the same, and it must respond the same. Not necessarily. When you understand the science behind it and the science of what's going on. So so you look at, where things are shifting. You have a 10-year-old whose body is beginning to change, right? That's the natural thing that happens, with the human element. Why is the change happening at 10 versus 16, 15?
Now, you see, this was an experiment, and I was watching her. Now, I will see how it works with her younger sister. So, my eldest daughter didn't eat dairy from age 3. So, she was vegan at age 4, but we stopped having dairy because her sister was born. And I wondered whether, because she hadn't had dairy, so she wasn't having all of those hormones pumping in. So she's very, very slim. She doesn't have excess fat. And I wondered whether she would develop later than the other girls. Well, she has developed later because she hasn't got that excess fat, and her friends have already started to develop breasts. But she is just starting to. So she was my little experiment. Is it because of the hormones in the milk and the dairy and the meat and all of that type of stuff?
Right.
Or is it, and we've filtered our water now. We've diffused our water for 4 years. So it's not that she's getting hormones in the water either. So that was an experiment. Are we just developing quicker? So I got my period at 12. It'll be interesting to see when she gets her period. But
Right.
it'll be more interesting with my younger daughter because she's not had dairy. She was so intolerant to it, she got upset through my milk. So she's only ever had dairy once, and she vomited everywhere. That's how we knew she had an allergy. So it'll be interesting. She's not really had meat, to see whether her body develops slower.
Right. Well, and again, that's a very interesting, thought and facts is what's going on here. How that human element, develops. You also had that 100th monkey effect, right? when a certain amount, something happens and it's a continuous thing, all of a sudden what's responding here is responding there. So is it just the natural, like you said, you know, where women, little girls are developing more. But then we do have that aspect of what's in the foods that we eat. You look at these young boys, right? Oh my goodness. They call them men boobs, right? And now it's become an event, a thing that just happens, and an acceptable thing. Well, I, it's interesting when you start watching some of these young boys and stuff, and it's like, wow, you know what? They have bigger boobs than the girls out here. What's going on, right?
Yeah.
So and you look at the scales and how they're being tipped, with that hormones, with how we respond, what our thought processing is, what's being triggered in that hormonal aspect, right? You have,
Vaccines, they've got hormones too. But one thing I've noticed, because my daughter is slim now, she's not skinny, but for her to get clothes to fit her, she has an age 6 waist, but an age, because she's tall like a mummy, age 12 she'd need for the length. So she's never got clothes to fit her. And my younger daughter isn't as slim, but she's still slimmer than the national size. So they've made the sizes bigger to fit the bigger children because they're
right.
being fed the wrong kinds of food that are affecting their bodies.
Oh, it's interesting that you say the different sizes, right? Like that. Well, I can still fit in a child 12 or 14. I barely reached that 5 foot. It's 4'11 3/4. When you're short, that 3/4 makes a
Oh,
huge
yeah.
difference, right? So again, when you look at that age perspective, and I tell you, I had really big problems finding shoes because they really don't make size 5 in women's shoes anymore, and they haven't for years. It starts at 6. Well, then when you go into the kids sizes, especially for sneakers and things like that, they stopped putting arches in the shoes. I'm like, what is going on here, right? So to be able to find a shoe that has an arch in it, because I have very high arches, right? And for the spine, when you understand the human body, and what happens, you need that support on your feet. You need that arch, right? And wearing shoes that don't have an arch for support, because you got that flatness, running, with your feet, it that bone doesn't have a chance to develop and stay in that arched way, and it becomes flat, which then caves in the ankles, which then caves in the knees, which caves in the hips, which now you got all kinds of spinal problems, right? Okay,
Yeah.
so you say, all right, well, what about these indigenous people? They're running around in bare feet. Yes, they are. And I ran around in bare feet, when I grew up as well. But you've got that natural freedom where your development is there. It's not locked into an environment called a shoe that puts it into a format almost like a mold,
Yeah.
right? Right? You have the freedom when that foot is bare. And to this day, I despise shoes. I don't like shoes. But again, it's how you grow up and what's going on, and when you understand the difference in the things that are shifting and how the times have changed. So why take the arch out of a shoe? Why do that? What's that
Well, you could
purpose?
say that there's money in people being ill, but we won't go there. I'm terrible with my children. They run around barefoot. Now, I'm a type 1 diabetic. So since the age of 12, I've been told, do not run around with bare feet. So I'm always telling my kids to put things on my feet. Plus the fact we live in a building site, it's getting finally nearly done. So I'm always saying, but they'll run outside, they'll run into the garden, they'll run over stones, bare feet everywhere, bare feet.
Right.
And it's the best thing for them. But
Well,
we've
and
just
again,
been
you're
taught for so long.
for so long. That's right. And when you connect with nature, right? Just connecting with that dirt, standing in that dirt and feeling what that is. Because we are an electrical magnetic being. We are made of the same substance that nature is, right? It's dirt and water. Okay, this whole element that we walk around, this meat suit, is dirt and water, right? Okay, so but it's in the format in which it is. But we need that natural resource. We need that energy. We need that breathing, right? And what better way to get that in when you put your feet directly on that ground, right?
And we're
When
so fortunate we live in the country, so they've got loads of areas and a big garden where they can actually put their feet in the ground. But there's so many children that can't physically put their feet on
in the
anything
ground,
but pavement or
right?
concrete.
Right, exactly. So when we look at life and how things are shifting and where do we go from here? So when you rewind where we started this conversation, is where do we make the shift? How do we make the shift? And what is the impact that we are going to leave on the current generation? And you look at technology. Oh my goodness. And again, we have this community separation. The human element was not designed to be separated. So how do we reconnect and align with communication? So look at the people that you're helping and the shifting and the things that you're giving different perspectives on in the work that you do and in your family life and where we are today. Where do you see all of this going in our tomorrows? What can you share with the audience to do right now to balance a shift here in the way the world once was, the way the world currently is, and who knows the uncertainty of what's going to be? So what is the advice that you could share with the audience today to keep perspective?
Part of reclaiming your power is to
Okay?
be aware that the only thing that matters to you is you. So to only care about what's going on in your energy field. Whatever else is going on, leave them to it. You're not here to fix that. But one of the things that I say is very powerful, and it's a great way of raising your vibration, is to become aware of your thoughts. Become aware of why you are thinking certain things, what you are thinking. So carry a little notebook around with you and write it down. The first time you say, God, that was so stupid of me. Why did I do that? Oh, I can't believe I've done that. You're so fat. You're so ugly. And you can't look nice in those clothes. I'm not buying that. We don't have enough money. All of these negative things that just go through our head. 75% of our thoughts every single day are negative. So become aware of them. Notice what we're saying, because once we become aware of our things, our thoughts, what we are doing, we can change it. That's why I say, stop going unconsciously through your life and become conscious. And that's how you shift. So then the next time, I used to do it. Oh, I can't believe I'm so stupid. Why have I done that? I used to drop the jug, the water that was filled for the diffuser into the diffuser. That was fun. And I had to get the water jug out because I wasn't present, because I wasn't thinking what I was doing. Always be stupid. So I made a point. The next time I did it, no, I'm not stupid. I just need to be more present. I need to be more here while I'm doing this, so that I'm not thinking about the next task and then the water. And then, of course, that makes me slower because I slow myself down. So the next time I do it, I'm there going, no, I need to be more present. It was a daft thing to happen, but not because I'm stupid. And just by putting that different perspective in seeing things, you're going to stop calling yourself stupid. And, even if everyone around you, everyone loves to call themselves stupid in front of everyone. People seem to think it's the done thing. But by you stopping it, your children will see, your partner will see, your friends will see. Start a revolution, because it's what we do that
Exactly.
matters.
That's great information. What other people think of you is their problem. What you think of you is yours.
That's
Right?
it.
Right. That's beautiful. Oh, Kathy, we could talk a lot about this. There's so much more out there in the world, right? But when it all boils down to is here with the self, and to be able that recognizing where the shift needs to take and what is the shift that's going to work for you, and being able to teach those little ones that, hey, you have a mind of your own and you can utilize it. How do you put it into performance? How do you expand your database? Oh, and you look at the database of information available today when it comes to technology, Google knows everything, right? Whew, sometimes Google knows more than Google needs to know. So, so again, it's like, all right, we can expand that. So, what do we do to apply that information? How do we separate the over amount and what makes it right for us, right? And to be able to teach those little ones that they have that ability and they have those choices. There are no right or wrong choices, there's choices that fit with your belief system, and you're learning your belief system. What are the experiences you want to have? And it's proceeding with caution, not with fear. And
And to know that you're enough. If every child in the world just knew that they were enough,
yes,
then the shift would happen instantly, wouldn't it?
I think you're right on that one. So it's doing every little bit to make it a better place. And that's what the show is all about, right? So, what is it that we can do to become that better us with every action, with every thought, and becoming aware of what that is? And like you say, instead of running around unconsciously conscious, pay attention to what your thoughts are and then generate them in the direction you want them to go. To do what? To become that best you. Because you know what? God, universe, divine intelligence, whatever you want to label it, does not make junk. It's our distorted and upside down thinking processes where we put contamination in that causes a dysfunction. So, how do we remove the dysfunction? We first must recognize what's transpiring, because we are what? The creators of our own being and our own choices, right? Wow, Kathleen, thank you so much for being on the show and all the great information and the sharing here today. I appreciate it, and the audience appreciates it. If people want to get a hold of you, what can they do? How can they reach you and what you do?
So, through the work I do, I put together this amazing free guide for you to actually learn how to reconnect with your inner child and remember who you once were. Because when you can remember who you once were, you're able to access that inner child. And it's the inner child who's wounded and doesn't believe that they're good enough, or that they did something wrong, or they're guilty, or they're full of shame. And when you can access that inner child and show them that you love them and get their trust, then you'll be shown where you need to heal. That's the power of inner child healing. So if you want to get this free guide, it's healingfromwithin.co.uk/reconnect.
Okay, so say that really slow and kind of spell it out, and then we'll
So
put it in the comments somewhere as well.
it's healing from within
Healing from within.
.co.uk
.co.uk
/reconnect.
/reconnect. Reconnect. Get reconnected
That's it.
to that child within. Thank you so much, my dear, for being here, and keep up the great work, because you know what? The more you get that out there, the more synergism, and that's that creation in that balance and that ripple effect that continually happens. So go out there, be that best you that you can be, because Kathy and I are going to be the best we that we can be. Thank you all for listening today, and have a wonderful day, evening, afternoon, middle of the night, whatever it is where you are, and just be that best you.